Hey, listeners, it's Kara, your host. After 176 amazing episodes and hundreds of book recommendations, I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you to find your next great read. The Bookish Lights Roadmap is your guide to all 175 podcast episodes, sorted by genre so you can quickly find the stories that fit your reading mood. From picture books to adult novels and everything in between, it's the perfect way to explore past episodes and discover new favorites. You can find your copy of the Bookish Lights Roadmap at www.bookishlights.com/read/roadmap, or just click the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights, a podcast where we tell our stories through our favorite books. Each episode features a bookish guest where we will talk about reading, life, and the seasons we're in, all through a thoughtfully paired book flight of recommendations for you. If you're looking for meaningful book recommendations and a space to slow down, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I am chatting with Joan Fernandez. Joan is a novelist who brings to light brilliant women's courageous deeds in history. She is a former senior marketing executive and general partner of the financial powerhouse Edward Jones. In 2018, she retired from a 30-plus year career to become a full-time writer. In April of 2020, she founded a historical fiction affinity group within the WFWA that grew from a handful of people to nearly 200 authors. Her short story, A Parisian Daughter, is published in the anthology Feisty Deeds, Historical Fictions of Daring Women. Her debut novel, Saving Vincent, a novel of Jo van Gogh, published in April of 2025. Joan calls both St. Louis and Sedona, Arizona home, enjoying foodie meals with her Cuban husband and antics with her grandkids. Welcome to the show, Joan.
Thank you, Kara. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, I am so excited. We were introduced via a mutual friend, and I heard about your book, and I was like, I have to read this novel. This sounds right up my alley. So,
Oh, that's awesome. Thank
yeah,
you.
historical fiction is my go-to genre still to this day. You can hook me in like 2 seconds. It's my catnip of books that I'm like, yep, I'll read that one.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, well, I feel like this is a pretty detailed bio about you, but I also feel like we're so much more than that. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, I think that what comes out through the book is I've always been drawn to women's issues. I was a late boomer, and so in a career where I was oftentimes the first woman not to be an administrative assistant, first woman, to lead an area, things like that. And when I came across Jo van Gogh's story and felt as though she hadn't been given any her due, her acknowledgement of being the reason that we know Vincent van Gogh, it just struck a nerve.
Yeah.
And so I that really sunk into me and ultimately led to this pretty radical decision to leave a career that I'd worked really hard in. But looking back, I had always said in college, I was an English major. I was always drawn to writing. I always said I was going to write a book. And so it was in my 50s that I kind of had a gut check realizing, oh my gosh, like if I don't start doing this,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. And so it's been a wonderful like new chapter of being a rookie after I'd sort of been an expert for a while. And I have loved it.
Yeah. I imagine it's using a very different part of your brain, though, than what you did for your role in corporate America.
Yes, it really digs into much more creative freedom on thinking about it isn't just speaking on behalf of an impersonal entity, being the
Sure.
representative of a company. And now it's thinking about what are the ideas that are important to me? Do I have evidence that they're in this person's story, true story that I want to write about? And so it's much more personal and so more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that was finding my own voice and figuring that out opened up a whole other area of growth for me. And it's been scary and super fun.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm always intrigued to find because I feel like the older I get, the more I realize we meander a lot in our life and careers. And, back naively when I was 18, I thought the job I went to college for was the job I was going to do forever. And here I am, like 3 jobs later. But my question for you is, did you find that there were skills that translated from your job in corporate America to writing?
Absolutely. So, for example, you referenced how I started a little group of historical fiction writers, and ultimately it grew to be over 200 people. And what that was me leaning in on, well, I don't know anything about writing. I'm figuring that out, but I do know how to facilitate a meeting. And so it was thinking about also the whole process of starting to write a book. So many people know it's just that blank page is so intimidating.
Yeah.
But so I thought about, well, what made me successful in my career? And it was things like, okay, I always hit deadlines. I could do that. I love working with other people. Okay, I need to find another group of people to be accountable to. I love being disciplined and starting an early morning. Okay, I'll be starting to write then every day at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so thinking about what are the things that have showed up in your previous life that
Yeah.
made you successful, I applied them to being a writer. And I still had and still do have tons of learning to do about the craft of writing, but knowing that you've got sort of those pillars to lean on helps tremendously.
Yeah.
And so it didn't make me feel completely empty-handed then in
Yeah.
starting this career. And honestly, I felt like I needed a stamp that said rookie that to put on my forehead because I really didn't know anything.
Yeah,
But
start this conversation with a rookie, please.
yeah, exactly. Or like, I'm just going to share right now that I'm going to ask dumb questions. It's like it gives you such permission then to be
Yeah,
curious and to figure things out.
yeah. I love that. And I think that's what I try to talk about on the show quite a bit is just think outside the box of the skills you do have because I was a physical therapist was my previous job and I maybe go back one day, but so many skills of that role have translated even to podcasting. And so
Mm.
it has amazed me. And once I started thinking outside of the box to do that. So,
I love that, right? And that's going to be great for your kids as I think about my grandkids now about just follow the passion, follow what your interest is, and don't worry about putting yourself in a box so quickly because all of
yeah.
those interests will emerge in another way.
Yeah, and mine was just purely out of I'm a military spouse. So we live a very transient life. So changing my job in a clinic to clinic all the time is just
Mm.
gets exhausting after a
Mhm.
while.
Mhm.
So I was like, I need something else that moves with us. We need to come back, and I think, but leaning into the skills you have and they do go across the range, right? And so thinking like that. Well, let's not leave the listeners on the edge of their seat any longer. Let's tell them about Saving Vincent if they haven't had a chance to pick it up. I'm sure you have a blurb at this point, so let us tell them about it.
Sure. Well, Jo van Gogh, I discovered her on a trip in 2016 with girlfriends. We decided to do this quick, no sleep weekend. We had to get away from our corporate jobs, our soccer schedules, our husbands asking us where we put the socks. So we take off, we go to Amsterdam, and the reason I always say I was with girlfriends is because with a girlfriend, you can say, "Hey, I'm going to take some time here," and people are like, "No worries, I'll be in the gift shop."
Yeah.
And so there I saw a note in the Van Gogh Museum about Jo, who was married to Vincent van Gogh's brother. Her husband's name was Theo, and he was an art dealer. And when I saw this reference to her, there was a little notation about how she had inherited all of Vincent's artwork, and that I saw it was actually in a family tree that Theo had died just 6 months after Vincent. And I don't know why, Kara, but that really surprised me.
Yeah.
I felt like I thought Theo was the one who had persisted with with Vincent. We all know Vincent, was kind of an underdog and died before he knew
Yeah.
he would be famous. And so when I discovered that it wasn't Theo at all, it was Jo, I think, as I referred to earlier, it just really struck me as kind of unfair. And it also opened up curiosity to me about her. So when we returned from that trip, I started Googling her and researching her and so forth. And I discovered I had some similarities. For
Yeah.
one thing, she was a brilliant marketer. And she wouldn't have used that term, but she created a market for Vincent out of nothing.
Yeah.
From valueless, that shift to priceless today, she orchestrated. And so because I have marketing, it was my career. I guess it is kind of still. Um, I could see the things that she did that were so intuitive to her, and that really fascinated me. And I didn't see that reflected in biographies that I was
Yeah.
starting to research. And then secondly, the other similarity is in the 30 years that I had my career, I was always in industries dominated by men. And so I was really impressed by the complexity that she faced in negotiating and maneuvering in an environment that was hostile to her. And I felt as though that female point of view was missing from the very few
Yeah.
stories that I found about her. Now, since then, the Van Gogh Museum has published a biography, and I haven't been back to the museum recently, but I understand they have some wonderful exhibits about her. So her time, is here, and I'm grateful for that. But in that moment in 2016 and the months that followed, as I looked into her, I felt as though her story was missing.
Yeah.
And then two other things that parents, I think, can relate to, or especially moms. She was a single parent. Her Theo
Wow.
died when her
Yeah.
baby was a year old. And anyone who's been around little kids, that is just like 24/7.
Yeah.
So she was raising a child on her own, and she ran her own business. She opened up a boarding house. And so she was a small business owner. And think about the
A mother of four.
personalities of
Yeah.
people who come in, for a boarding house. So she was doing all of that during the day. And then it was at night that she was sending out letters to galleries and dealers to consider Van Gogh's works
Yeah.
because she had inherited a good 400 or so paintings, about half of what we know his collection to be today.
Yeah. I
So,
am thinking
yeah,
about the time period too, right? Of just women weren't working outside. Not only is it a male dominated industry, it's just that was not, women weren't working outside of the home in that period
no,
either. So that
they
was all,
weren't.
and what a rarity that was.
Yes, exactly. I mean, especially the middle class, like the lower class, yes, there
Yeah.
were shopkeepers and women were working on farms and so forth. But the middle class, which is what Jo was a part of, because her dad was a part of the Industrial Revolution. So he was really,
Yeah.
it was all about work. So society then was defined as, okay, women bear children and manage households. They're in the private sphere. Stay over there.
Yeah. Hmm.
Men do the work, risky, dangerous, and oftentimes it was, right?
Yeah.
And politics, they stay on the other side. The way society works is those two roles are separate. So it was phenomenal that that would have been internalized in her growing up. And so it was phenomenal that she chose another way. And in fact, in my research, I looked for clues on why and how could she have done that? Because we grow up understanding gender through our own society. So how did that
Yeah.
happen? So that
Yeah, I
was a
always
part of
think
the
of
research.
women that do that, right? That we read about now that have stepped out. They were brave and audacious, and I just because that was not something you did in society at that time. But she was faced with it too, like being a single mother, widowed. What are you gonna do? You have to
Right?
provide.
Yes, you
Yeah,
do have to provide. And I also kind of really tried to walk in her shoes in terms of her husband, Theo, who was the love of her life, dying after less
yeah,
than 2 years. And then having this little boy who looks like her husband, and imagining what that would have felt like, that sense of my son will never know his father.
Yeah.
and what an amazing man he was. And with that love for that child, feeling as though I need him to know who he comes from and what these
Yeah.
paintings mean. And of course, the art establishment at the time thought that Vincent's work was just the product of a crazy person, somebody just throwing paint on the canvas, right? It was Theo who was able to sort of drop all the conventional knowledge about what appropriate art was
Yeah.
and really see what his brother was trying to do. And so I believe that Jo, in many ways, in those less than 2 years that she had with Theo, she was in kind of an informal apprenticeship because Theo chose not to keep the private and public sphere separate. He invited her in because his
Yeah.
work was so challenging. And one of my pieces of research was to read letters that the two of them wrote. It's in an out of print book called Brief Happiness.
Okay.
And in there, they are through their, this is when they were engaged. That's why they were writing letters. But in there, there's conversations about, well, what is art? And how do you
Oh,
know art is good? And and that was from Jo. And Theo responding, art must touch your soul. You must look beyond the paint.
yeah.
And so she was not clueless when she inherited those paintings. I think it took a while for her to appreciate that she actually did know what she was talking about because she had lived with Theo's incredible dedication to his brother. And later that became her own agency. She
Yeah.
was choosing then to promote him.
Yeah. It's such an incredible story. And I've heard kind of whispers before I was introduced to you, like, did you know that Vincent van Gogh, there was a woman behind his story too? And I
Mm,
was kind of like, huh, right? Like it just gets in your head. And I think the more we learn about and hear about these stories, it just, like you said, opens up to the women's perspective of, no, there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than just Vincent van Gogh, right? And like what we see at very surface level.
yes, and I love the recognition that this idea that everyone has to be kind of this solo genius is just false.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, we
and
just
we know, like being creative, you don't have the time to be everything. You can't be every role that you need to get to that level. So,
right,
yeah,
right. Yeah. So if that gets communicated, I hope so, that really and in fact what was so interesting, I was already a Van Gogh fan. Just sort of picked him up through osmosis. And then it was through uh learning about Joe's story, I actually appreciate his art even more.
yeah,
And so it doesn't take away from someone's genius to understand the support network that they had,
yeah,
in making that happen.
yeah. You need the
And
time
love
to
that
be,
message too. Yeah.
yeah, you need the time to be creative, not be
Mm,
brainstorming how I'm going to market something that's so different to the art world, right? I mean, you need
right.
that.
Or you need to know there's another adult in the house when you're recording a podcast who will help keep the 5-year-old from walking in. I mean, it's just
Exactly.
support, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't do this in isolation, for sure. What did you learn about yourself through writing this book?
Well, I alluded to uh, vulnerability, and I think I've really found, and I'm continuing to find my voice.
Yeah,
So, having spent 30 years representing other organizations, which each one had good attributes,
sure.
I have no regrets. There was that, as well as the willingness to, as I said, be a rookie again.
Yeah,
Because after you've been in a career quite a while, you're looked to for answers, with people have questions, and you know what, you have answers because you have lots
sure.
of experience.
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of fun to all of a sudden be the one in the room that's got nothing to say. All I'm doing is taking notes.
Yeah.
I I used to think I felt like I was like on the top of row of the bleachers and there's a playing field and all these things are happening and I was just listening. New vocabulary, new ways, new things because you can imagine that the world of the arts, so music, art, writing is completely different than the suits that are in a financial services firm.
Yeah.
Just a different way of expressing themselves, different ways of seeing the world. And it was so expansive and wonderful and insecure.
Yeah.
And so that was a fantastic way of continuing to feel like I'm not done yet. And I still have
Yeah.
many, many ways that I can become someone new.
Yeah. And just explore a side that maybe you didn't have time for between family and work and all of the things when earlier.
100%, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the mortgage has to get paid. I mean, it just comes first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, are you working on any new projects?
Well, Kara, I am staying open.
Okay.
I am 100% of my time right now is spent in marketing Saving Vincent because I feel like she has a really big story and an important story. So I'm doing lots of talks, lots of appearances,
Yeah.
but I am also holding space in my thought about the next book. And I've played around spending a couple of months researching this person, researching another person, but I'm waiting for the same knowing that I had with Joe.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for uh, that same certainty that this is a story that needs to be told. And one of the great freedoms that I have by pursuing writing as a second career is I don't have to pay the mortgage with what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so most of my author friends are all working on continue to work on the next book. And so I am impressed and in awe of that productivity. I don't feel like that's what I need to be doing right now. So that's my long answer to not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like you said, there's two sides of that. And so I think being open to it but you have to spend so much time on whatever topic you do choose. So I totally understand I'm waiting for the right one to kind of bite me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who you are as a reader. Have you always been a reader?
I have, Kara. I have. I was one of those kids that was always like getting yelled at by my parents to like get outside. So of course I'd go outside, but I'd like bring a book with me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I have always loved reading. And that translated into like AP English classes, in high
Yeah.
school, and then being an English major, and then choosing a career that where communications is so fundamental, and that being marketing.
Sure.
And so writing and reading oftentimes sort of are, kissing cousins. So yes, I've always been a reader. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have a little bit more time to read than I used to.
Yeah, that's usually my next question is how do you find time to read in your busyness? Because we all have a lot going on.
I have to say, one of my inspirations is now that I know so many authors,
Yeah.
not only do I want to read their books, but they talk about other books. And so, the people kid around about their TBR pile,
Yeah.
so I just, and oftentimes I'll find a really wonderful writer and I'll want to read all their books.
Yeah.
So there really is there's no gap on what's the next book I'm going to read type of a thing.
Yeah, for me, it's just what can I grab next? What
Yes.
can I get my hands on? And that's going to be the next one that falls
Oh,
in line. So,
yes. You have a treasure trove. You know so many books. That's wonderful.
yeah, yeah, it's been wonderful for my TBR. I'll just leave it at that. Well, you have brought three books with you today. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
Yes, I think the common theme between these books is that they're all really about finding a sense of identity, a sense of feeling comfortable in their own skin. And through these books, I feel like I got to know what it's like to be in someone else's skin.
Yeah.
So I I feel these books were markers for me in just being so impressed by their humor and their clarity and their sort of sense of being emerging identities and trying to figure out who they are. I
Yeah.
think that's like a universal condition, right?
Yeah.
At some point you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I?
Yeah.
You know,
You
that
have a
sense of
moment.
identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is one of my favorite reasons to read is when I feel like I can walk in someone else's shoes for a novel and just, and then that builds empathy and all the things that come with that when you have a moment to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what's
Exactly.
the first book you brought today?
Well, my first book is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And what I loved about this book is that it kind of talks about the dueling identities that the main character has by being a girl who is Black, very much at home in her own community, but she's going to a white preppy high school. And so she's kind of switching her sense of belonging between those two communities and grappling with that.
Yeah.
And not only do I think that's really relevant today because racial identity is such a current topic, but I think that's true for all of us.
Yeah.
We switch who we are depending on the community that we're in. And so, how do you figure out who you are authentically that you can bring to everywhere? And so, and also for people who haven't read that book, um, hate is actually an acronym in the book. So don't think about it, it's the hate you give, but it's an acronym. And I won't, it'll be a
Yeah.
spoiler if I tell you what that acronym is.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to be a turnoff by that being in the title.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, we can all relate to that where we are one way maybe in our professional lives or a different way with our family. And there's certain things you turn on and off about your personality to do that. And this, I loved this book. And it's not, is it a YA book?
Well, I think it is.
Okay, I think so. I'm
Yeah.
like, and that doesn't take away from the story at all, but it's a quick read. You know, it's not going to be one that's going to be take you a long time to get through, but it was a page turner for me because I wanted to know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. What's the next book you brought today?
The next one is Such a Fun Age, and that is by Kylie Reed. And it's a little bit similar in that it also speaks to professional and racial identity, and that this is the main character is a Black girl, and she's very comfortable in who she is, but she encounters things like sort of microaggressions and a society that it puts her down at different times. It's not at all a negative book, but what it does is it gives you like another perspective on how someone might feel when they're not, when they're considered less than. And I totally related it to the sort of put downs that I experienced as a female in a male world. So it's a universal sense, but I also loved it because it's really a millennial point of view.
Okay.
And so it is fresh, it is young, it is fun, it is funny, and it makes some really wonderful points. So I loved it.
Yeah, I've seen this book around. I haven't gotten to pick it up yet, but maybe this is my nudge to go
Ooh.
ahead and grab it. So that was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. And then what's the last book you brought today?
So Una Out of Order came out a couple of years ago, Marguerite Mortimer, and this is a time travel book.
Oh,
So
okay.
super fun in that, yeah, what you find out is Una, every year, well, she discovers every year at New Year's Eve, she wakes up in the new year and she's a different age. And so she jumps from being like a teenager to who she is at 50 years old. So you can
Okay.
imagine that's
Yeah.
like an eye opener, right? But it's this exploration of constantly redefining her identity that I just love the creativity of this book. I loved Una herself, who is funny and constantly being forced to confront who am I now? And so she's figuring out even though she's showing up as these random ages after New Year's Day, that she is figuring out kind of who she is.
Yeah.
So it's another book of sort of identity and self-discovery and done in a really fresh and creative way.
Oh, I love the idea of that. I feel like living this military spouse life, we reinvent ourselves every time we move. And solely because you put everything in a blender and you land in a new spot and then you have to figure out who you want to be there.
Hmm.
I bet I could relate really well to this book I mean, I haven't read it, but it sounds like something I need to read. So that was Una Out of Order by Marguerite Mortimer. Thank you so much for bringing those books with you today. I always find it so fun how people pair them together and choose the books to come on the show. How I love to end it is with our speed round of questions that you can answer really quick. Are
Okay.
you a rereader?
No.
Okay. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
I loved Anne Murrell Lindbergh's The Gift of the Sea.
Oh, yes. I loved that book. I just reread it again.
Did you?
I think
Yeah.
last year because I read it
Hmm.
maybe 8 years or so ago, but there's so many
Hmm.
gems in there.
So many gems. And so I'm a liar if I say I never reread, but I do. I have reread that one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it's a totally different, like the story. There's just, again, like the gems and the wisdom that's in that book, right? You could hear that again in 10 years from now, and it would still be relevant in a different way to that new period of your
And I
life.
have to tell you I know this is a speed thing, but I'll
You're
just tell
good.
you real quickly. When I first read that book, I was like 8.5 months pregnant with my first child. And I laid down, I was whatever, awkward physically. I laid down on the sofa. I pick up the book, and I just felt like it was the perfect book to be kind of in this doorway of moving from
Yeah.
one part of my life to another. And she just spoke to me.
Yeah.
Those essays just really are just speak to your heart. And I think it is a good reread because it can be applied in so many. In fact, I think I'm going to reread it now. It can
Yeah.
be applied to so many
Email me. Let
times
me
of
know
your
how
life.
it goes.
Okay.
All right. Where is your favorite place to read?
I love to read. I usually tuck myself away either outside because I love being outside, but if it's in the winter, I've got a favorite sofa that I will sit on, and that's how I love to end the day. I love to end the day like around 4 o'clock because I've been marketing, etc.,
Yeah.
just to give myself that gift of at least an hour of reading.
Yeah.
I love that.
That sounds like I can't wait for that period of my life. This is like the moments of parenting where I'm like, I don't want to wish away these sweet ages too, because I know I will miss them. But there's
Yes.
also like that, oh, to just take an hour
Yes.
in
Yes.
any part of the day to do what I would like would be amazing.
It will
So,
happen. It will
yeah,
come.
I
Yeah.
know. And then I'll yearn for today. So I need
Mhm.
to put that in perspective for myself. Well, lastly, what are you reading next?
I am reading actually a book that will come out in 2026 because I'm
Oh,
going to blurb it.
I love that.
Yes, this is called The Song of Belonging,
Okay.
and it's by Michelle Wilson.
Okay.
And it sounds wonderful. She reached out to me because she had read Saving Vincent and felt like, we're kindred
I
sisters.
love that.
And it's a dual timeline. And what appeals to me is the earlier timeline is 1934 with a woman named Grace. And then the second timeline is really current. I think it's around 2019 with
Okay.
Grace's great granddaughter. In the story, this song of belonging has to do with family, has to do with magic, has to
Ooh.
do with unearthing old secrets and revealing them. And so I I have a little love affair with anything that has to do with magic, so I'm looking forward to reading that.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fantastic. I'll have to keep my eye out for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. I know your time is precious, and I appreciate all you've given me.
Thank you so much, Kara. This has been so much fun, and the time has flown by, and I just love what you're doing with this podcast and for book lovers everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Joan Fernandez, including her book flight of books with a strong sense of identity that allow you to walk in another character's shoes. We'd love to know what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.